In this tutorial, we're going to explore the basics of Storybook by building a basic button component. We are going to learn how to use controls, how to implement actions, and we're also going to learn how to create folders to keep your components organized. To start off, what I have here is a basic React app. All I did was run npx create React app, and then I initiated Storybook with npx storybook init, which generated this stories folder and this storybook folder. Let's run npm run storybook to start Storybook in the browser. This can take a while, so I'm going to pause the video. Alright, so we have all of these example stories, and I'm actually going to leave them and not delete them, because I believe it's a good idea to have a look at them. So here I've created my own component. I call it mybutton.jsx. I imported React, prop types, and some very simple CSS that I prepared. I have a couple of different props. Size is going to be a class name, and I will use inline styling for the background color and the text color. The text we see on our button is simply going to be the label. We will also use prop types and default props. So prop types is used for type checking and defining what type your props should be. So it sends error messages to the browser console when the wrong types are used. Default props lets you populate the default value of your props. Next, let's create our story. Your story should have the name of your component, and then .stories.jsx. And then we need to import the component we just created. And then Storybook takes a default export object where we can define metadata for our component. So for example, we can specify what component we want to work with, so in our case my button, and what title our component should have in Storybook. From here we can create our story. All we need to do for that is to export a const. I'm going to call my story primary, and primary is going to return my component. So if we have a look in the browser now, we can see our component here. However, we are not able to use the controls. In order to use the controls, we need to work with Args, which Storybook will recognize and allow us to manipulate our component's props. What I'm going to do is comment out this story and create a template which takes Args in the parameters and returns our component. And we are also using the ES6 spread operator to utilize our Args. What we can then do is basically to create an instance of our template. By creating stories and binding them to the template. This gives our stories access to the args, which we can then edit. So I can easily create multiple stories and give each story different attributes. To backtrack a bit to prop types and default props, if I were to leave my args empty, we would see the value of our default props in the Storybook UI. Also, let's see what happens if we don't specify our prop types. Now let's have a look at creating the radio boxes that we want to use for our sizes. Taking a look at our default export object, Storybook allows us to define arg types here. That means that we can send instructions to Storybook about our arguments. In our example, we want our size prop to have radio controls, and we want our options to be small, medium, and large. So now we have radio buttons that allow us to set our class name to a string value of either small, medium, or large. Now if you press the button, we are not logging any actions. Let's have a look at our handle click prop so we can log our clicks. First we need to add our onClick prop, so then we need to head back to our arg types to define handle click. So we refer to our prop handle click, and we say that it's an action, and the name of this action is name of our action. Now every time we click the button, we are logging this action here. So from here we can populate our props and create as many stories as we want. And we can easily create folder structures by adding slashes to our title. The last thing I want to mention is this menu up here, where you have docs with a bunch of information about your component. You also have these zoom buttons, and you can change the background, and you can also set the viewport.